Hello, is anyone there? Okay. Okay, great. Here we go. Okay. Message us just so we know who's here, who's on live with us, because it doesn't tell us names, it doesn't tell us who's on, and we want to make sure everything's working right. Can you guys hear us?
Hello.
Great. Okay. We have 4 people on. Does off to the side, I think you can click the little blue chat icon, and it'll open a thing on the side of the screen, and you'll be able to reply back to my message just to let us know if you're here or not, because it keeps dipping between 2 and 4 viewers. I don't know if it's like new people or people haven't been already. We'll get started in like 30 seconds. Okay, cool. Thanks for letting us know you can hear. I'm going to set up the PowerPoint. My name is Jonathan.
This is Cameron. Hello.
There we go. You can see that. It's going to be mainly this for the whole thing, so you won't have to see us. But welcome. Like we said, my name is Jonathan. This is Cameron.
Hello.
We've been working on this for the past 2 years of setting up a community services district in IV, and now we are getting people to run for it. So it's not going to be us, though. It's going to be someone out there in the community, 5 people who get elected. But it's a historic moment. You want to say anything else to this?
I mean, folks have been working for this for almost 50 years, so it's a really big moment. And I think the importance of the first board is it's going to be the folks who need to really put the district on a good path.
Yeah, and that's actually exactly what our first slide is about. Is why this is so important. Sorry, we just got a message in. Okay. So this is important. This is Isla Vista has been, like Cameron said, 50 years looking for a form of self-governance. Over the past, we've had various forms. We've had the Parks Board was started in 1972. We had a Municipal Advisory Council that no longer exists, Redevelopment Agency, but none of those were what people were really looking for in terms of the broad powers and being able to represent the community on a wide variety of issues and have independent funding from any other external group to, put money behind our words. So this is Isla Vista's first chance at broad self-governance, and it's a huge responsibility being on the first board. You want to go over some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this first point's really good. A lot of people look at George Washington and they say that he sort of set the tone for the United States of America, right? And set the tone for what the presidency was going to be. To me, that's one of the biggest ones. Everyone knows that famous anecdote about how the early Americans came to George Washington and said, "You've been such a great president, be our president forever." And he said, no, we just left having a king, and that's not what we wanted, so we need to make sure we don't go right back to it. In the same way, I think the first board's going to get a lot of pressure, and you're going to be pulled in a whole bunch of different directions, right? And so it's going to be important for you to be able to have a vision in mind and really work to carry that out. That flows right into the second one. So making that tangible change that people want to see. You can't every other day go, well, that's a great argument in favor of that, so I'm for it. Or that's a great argument in opposition, I'm against it now. Again, you are the elected official if you choose to move forward with this, and it's going to require a certain level of, first of all, self-confidence, and second of all, the ability to analyze a lot of different viewpoints and come out of that with a decision.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you are the buck. Like, when people say, why isn't anything getting done in IV? It's going to be, the responsibility is on you to get those things done. The CSD will not magically do anything that it's empowered to do, which we'll go over later, but there's a service plan where there are ideas the communities come up with that we'd like to see happen, but those don't just magically happen. You would be the person who is the driver of initiating meetings, getting people together, discussing them, putting together a plan, and moving it forward. So it's your job to make things happen that the people, the voters, can see and say, like, wow, I'm really glad I voted for that because I can see X happening right there in front of my face every weekend. And I feel better now about Isla Vista. So it will never magically happen. It'll be you. And like it says right after that is you'd be building trust with the community. The IVRPD has a lot of trust with Isla Vista residents. A lot of people like that organization. It's been around for a long time. Similarly, the CSD will need to do the same thing and showing people this is a group that is your first line of defense. This is your CSD. And if we get off on the wrong foot, you might put in seeds of distrust that we might not ever get rid of or might not get rid of for a very long time. So we want to be as positive and well liked and well respected and respectful of the community. And that's the responsibilities. There's not much room for error in this at the beginning of this. Yeah. And the next point, as a utility users tax.
Yeah, this is kind of it's going to get a little bit nuanced, but the utility users tax is going to be the main way the district is funded, right? So if you think about a car with no gas, it's going to be impossible to drive. In the same way, a district without funding isn't going to be able to provide any services at all. It's going to be a skeleton board meeting simply for the purpose of figuring out how to get a tax passed. I see that as a waste of your time if you are one of the elected officials. I see that as a waste of the district's capabilities, right? And so one of the main things that I think is important when we're looking at whether or not a candidate is credible is, do they support that utility user tax, right? And what I mean by credible is this a candidate who I would want to put my faith in? Is this someone who I believe is wanting to run for this district because they have Isla Vista's best intentions at heart? And when I say I'm putting myself in the shoes of an IV voter, right? I'm an IV resident myself. And if someone comes to me and says, I want to run for this district, but I don't want it to have any money, that's a red flag to me. And that I don't think is going to curry a lot of favor with folks who want the best for the long term.
Cool. So next up, we understand that not everyone has this basic knowledge, and it's not required to run for office. So we're going to provide it for you so you have some context, a little bit on what you're exactly running for and what the situation is out here in Isla Vista. So Isla Vista is not incorporated within any city. A lot of people might think that we're part of Goleta because our zip code is the same, or Santa Barbara because the university's address is in Santa Barbara. It's not in either. But we are not part of any city. We are unincorporated, so we're like the vast swaths of land in the middle of the county of the agricultural land. We don't have a municipal government here. So our direct government is the county of Santa Barbara, which is extremely uncommon in places this dense with this many people and with the level of services and infrastructure required to make it work. So Isla Vista is a unique place, and our government situation is unique as well. And it doesn't really meet our needs. That's why we're doing this. That's why people have been doing this for decades, is because the status quo doesn't really make anyone happy in Isla Vista, doesn't really do anything. it's a very baseline, basic level of government support. We only have one representative that we can elect, and we are 20%, 30% of their constituency. That's not enough for 20,000 people almost.
And just very quickly, I want to make the side reference. If you start to get involved in this, you'll read a lot about past movements. And the more and more folks you talk to, you'll hear a lot of negativity directed towards the county. I want to make it very clear that the goal of this CSD and our goal as people who are going to be involved in the campaign is not to bring negativity against the county. I don't look at anything in Isla Vista as the county's fault per se. These are issues that are systemic, and we need to work from here. So another thing I just want to point out is we're certainly not looking for anyone who's doing this to get vengeance over any sort of other government force, right? That's not the type of folks who should be running for this.
Oh. So the difference between being unincorporated and having a city is that with a city you have distinct boundaries, and cities can do things like pass laws that only apply to those boundaries and have taxes that only apply to those boundaries to fund services within the boundary of the city. And you can elect your local city council. So Isla Vista residents don't get a vote in Goleta City Council, for example. Some people sometimes even think that. Even very experienced local people in politics sometimes believe, like, oh, doesn't Isla Vista get a vote in Goleta City Council? We don't. So what a special district is it's different from a city. So a city is one type of government you can have, but it's broad-based. It has to deal with a various amount of features. Sometimes a place can't fund a city, like Isla Vista, so we need to use special districts to get the same level of service. Right now, for example, you have a sanitary district that takes care of sewage. So in other places, maybe the city handles that, but here we need a special district to do it. And we have a water district. We're in the Goleta Water District, and that handles all the water in Isla Vista. So special districts are kind of specialized, small forms of government that can raise money to perform a very specific task or tasks.
Okay, we're back.
Hi, can you guys hear us again? Someone text me if you can, just so we know, but I'll get back to the presentation. All right, so we can use the money that we raise for specific things. We do have some limitations, though. Special districts can't make law. We can't pass a law that says we're going to override the social host ordinance or something like that. That is, only cities can do that. We also can't make planning decisions. We can make recommendations, and they're usually upheld, but we aren't a final authority on our planning decisions. Those are two major limitations. So we don't have what's called police, quote-unquote, police powers, not police enforcement, but being able to write laws that regulate human behavior. We cannot do that like a city would. So, but we could make laws and ordinances about the services we provide. So if we were providing a sidewalk. If we built a sidewalk, we could make a rule on what can and cannot happen on the sidewalk, but we cannot make general rules for Isla Vista.
Or I think the best example is if we had a parking district. We could make rules about who can park where and when, but without that, we can't just go around saying, you know, your house needs to be blue on this block, sorry.
Yeah, cities can do that though. So IVCSD is a special district, and Cameron will run us through what makes it special.
Yep. So there's going to be three main components: the powers, the tax, and the board makeup. So we'll start with the powers. You can think of them like superheroes, superpowers, right? So the powers that the CSD has is going to be 8 different things. I'm not going to go into every single one in depth because it's going to bog you down. I will highlight some of the ones that I think are going to gain the most notoriety that a lot of people are going to be interested in. One of those is a parking district, right? So it'll have the ability to control who is able to park where and when. It'll be able to set up paid parking spaces, install meters, install signs, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to be with, of course, the permission of Santa Barbara County, right? Because they own the roads, they own the sidewalks. We've already spoken with a lot of county staff who have told us that really, as long as the money's there to do it, they're not going to stand in the way of us making improvements in Isla Vista, right? The county is also invested in seeing Isla Vista improve. Another big power is going to be the tenant mediation program. This is something that makes this district incredibly unique. There's no other special district in the state of California, I would say probably in the United States, that is able to provide this power through a community services district. Currently, it's being provided by the city of Santa Barbara and the county of Santa Barbara. We do not have access to face-to-face mediation or telephone mediation, but it would be provided through the CSD in this case. So I think that's an excellent opportunity, like we were saying earlier, to build trust with the community, right? Because there's going to be a lot of people who utilize that service who probably wouldn't have gotten involved otherwise, or probably wouldn't have come to ask about it, because right now all you can get is info over the phone. A third service is definitely going to be what I would say is a municipal advisory council. So you'll hear it called a MAC. This is kind of our advocacy arm, if you think about it. So we have Lobby Corps. A lot of you who are students know about Lobby Corps, and their job is to go out and lobby local elected officials at the state and federal level for things to benefit students, to benefit the community, etc. The Municipal Advisory Council serves a similar role in local politics. So earlier, Jonathan mentioned that we can't make planning decisions. In the same way, we can't make decisions about what the county is going to do overall. If we could, you know, I think a lot of things would be different. But what's the next best thing is having a group of people that's a broad representation. The nice thing about a MAC is it can include business owners, non-residents, police officers, the whole 9 yards, right? So I'll stop there because I want to move on to the tax. This is going to be one of the, I would say, the most critical pieces of the CSD overall. Jonathan mentioned earlier that most community services districts can only use a property-based tax. What that means is a tax on the number of bedrooms you have in your home, or just a tax on your house overall, called a parcel tax. We decided that that wasn't a fair way to tax people. The community came together and said, we think a property tax, first of all, probably would never get passed, right? Because who's going to support a property tax? Residents, but who's going to oppose it? Property owners. And that means rents are going to go sky high. And that was something we really wanted to step away from. So through the legislation that created the IV Community Services District, we were able to include what's called a utility user tax. Now, this is a type of special tax that's based on the utility usage for gas, electric, sewage, water, and trash. Telecommunications like cable or cell phone service are not included because we felt that those disproportionately burdened people who have lived here for 30 years, right? They're going to pay that tax for a long time, right? Whereas you, if you have cable service, you're only going to pay that tax for a couple years. In the same way, if you have your cell phone, it's most likely registered to your parents. People who live here are going to have it registered to themselves. So that was why we excluded that one. To get into the specifics of the tax itself, it's going to be 8%. So it's going to be at a rate of 8% of whatever your utility bills are every month. Based on, we asked people for their utility bills, and based on the numbers that we crunched, we took the average. You're looking at about $5 to $10 per month per person. So we don't think it's a huge impact, though we do recognize that that's an increase in expenditure regardless. We also wanted to be sensitive to the fact that there are folks who make very little money who manage to live in Isla Vista. With property taxes, it is impossible to offer low-income exemptions. You cannot exempt someone from a property-based tax. Fortunately, with a utility user tax, you are allowed to include an exemption for low-income folks, and low-income folks are already offered an exemption on their utility bills through the state. So that's another reason we went with that tax specifically. I think overall it produces a whole lot of good reasons not only to support the tax, but also a good way to understand what it can do and how we're leveraging that money. The last one is going to be the board makeup. Oh, I'm sorry. Jonathan just mentioned to me I should tell you how much the tax can raise. We're looking at about $512,000 per year to be spent on services in Isla Vista. So then the last one is the board makeup, right? And this one's probably the quickest. There are 5 elected positions, elected at large. One of them is going to be a permanent 2-year term. But this will get a little complicated. The way the math works, that way we don't have all of the board being up for election at the same time. During the first election, 2 of the seats are going to be 2-year seats, and 3 of them will be 4-year terms.
3-2.
Oh, I apologize. The other way around. There will be 3 2-year seats and 2 4-year terms. So this is a great opportunity if perhaps you are a sophomore who's going to be a junior, if you're someone who wants to study abroad during their last year, it would be a good idea to look into a 2-year seat, right? Because your goal should be to serve out your full term. If you're going to pursue this and you're serious about it, your goal should absolutely be to stick all the way through. That helps build continuity and make sure that the projects that you start don't get dropped all of a sudden. So really keep that in mind, that this is a multi-year commitment. We talked about 5 seats. The other 2 are going to be appointed. So you won't be able to run for those. They're going to be chosen. One of them will be chosen by the County of Santa Barbara, most likely based on the recommendation made by our supervisor. Right now, that's Doreen Farr. At the time that the district is formed, it will either be likely Joan Hartman or Bruce Porter, depending on who wins the election. The 7th and final seat will be appointed by the Chancellor of UCSB. So it will be up to Chancellor Yang and his appointment.
Oh, and in exchange, if that sounds weird to anyone, we are getting $200,000 a year from the university for mutually agreed upon projects from the CSD. So that seat isn't just giving them a say in our board, they're also giving the board a lot of resources for us to work with them to get done for Isla Vista.
Right.
So it's a partnership.
And I'd also like to point out that, like I said, a part of the goal of this district moving forward is not to strong arm these powers that be, right? We're not trying to use this as a tool to fight the county and fight the university. This should be an opportunity to build bridges and strengthen collaboration. So having them at the table for all the decisions is a really great way to do that.
All right, so we have covered the 101. These are the basics. If you do have questions on any of these points, feel free to reach out to any one of us. I'll add our emails at the end. Next thing is eligibility. So it's very basic. You need to be 18 years old or on November 8th, 2016. So either turn 18 that day or be 18 before then. You're going to be a citizen by that day as well. And you need to be registered to vote within the boundaries of the CSD by August 12th, which is when you need to file papers. That office is off of Turnpike. Yes, so we're getting a message that 4 are 4 years and 1 is 2 year. That is the standard. That is how it's going to be for a long time in the long run. But in the first election, in order to stagger the elections, like for example, the IVRPD runs 3 seats in presidential elections, 2 in midterm elections. So in order to create that staggering, we need to, in the first election, the county elections office will do that for us so that we could have a staggered board.
Correct.
So it's not 4 seats up every 4 years.
So what?
Or 5 seats up every 4 years.
So to make that distinction really clear, what we are saying to you, what we just said about how many seats is different than what is in the law. The reason that it is different than what's in the law is because it will only be different for the first cycle of elections, and that is to create the staggering. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay.
So yeah, you need to file papers by August 12th. The papers are a bit complicated, but nothing you can't figure out. But I did it in 2014 with relative ease. There's guides online to fill them out, and I'm available to help. But yeah, you just need to file the papers by August 12th, and you need to be registered to vote in the CSD boundaries by the 12th as well. A quick note is the university-owned properties in Isla Vista, which are West Winds, Westgate, and El Dorado,
As well as San Clemente, just in case
as well
you're
as
wondering.
and San Ynez don't count in the boundaries. The university asked those to be exempted. So if you live in those or in any of the university residence halls, you won't be able to run for the CSD.
Nor will you be taxed by the CSD.
Or will you be able to vote. But you will still be able to enjoy the services when you're in Isla Vista. For example, the community policing mechanism, if it's enacted, will be to your benefit as well, but you just wouldn't have a vote or pay the tax.
And you will also still be receiving all the same services provided to UCSB students that regular residents of Isla Vista do not receive. So for instance, you have, mediation services, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so like, for example, SBCC students cannot use a community housing office that UCSB students are already being provided. So next thing, campaign expectations. This is just to let you know, their campaigns are tough and difficult, and this is the first one for this board. So you'll probably be in the spotlight more than it's ever going to be in the spotlight because it's the first one. So it's a lot of work to be in a campaign. There's a lot, and on the technical side, you need to the paperwork you fill out on August 12th. There are reporting deadlines that you still have to meet if you expect to raise money and spend it. So it is not an cakewalk in the park. I mean, you could cakewalk and you might not win. So it's a lot of work. It seems like it's going to be a competitive election. It's not going to be only, the amount of people running for the amount of seats open. It's going to be competitive, and you're going to be needing to share your vision for the CSD alongside other people, and let the voters decide who is the best person to represent Isla Vista and make these decisions for us. So it's nothing personal too. So if you lose or if you don't end up being able to run, don't could someone let me know if it's working? Because
And also let us know where the last place was before we cut out.
hello, can you guys hear us? Okay, cool. And did we cut off during the campaign expectation? We had just started talking about the elected officials, I believe, but we'll just jump right into that part. The current elected officials in Isla Vista who represent here very locally are myself. I got elected in 2014 as SBCC trustee. My district covers more than just Isla Vista, but most of it is Isla Vista. Paula De La Cruz is IVRPD director. She was elected in 2014 as well, as was Jacob LaBelle. they were running together for that position. So these are people you can ask and reach out to if you would like a better sense of how it is like to run and be an IV as an elected official. It's, probably dissimilar to other places.
Just really quickly, someone said we dropped off right after we said don't. What we were saying is don't take it personally if for some reason you don't win the election or if for some reason you decide you can't run, it's not right. First of all, you're not letting anyone down to make that choice. It's better, it's better to make that choice for yourself and say I'm not ready than it is to do it and find out later. So in addition to don't feel bad if it doesn't work out.
And I think I don't know if it caught the part that I said that, there are so many more opportunities to get involved after the election if you don't win. You could be on a CSD committee, you can be on the MAC, you can go to the public meetings, you can work directly with a board member or the general manager to get a project that you want done to be involved in it. So I wouldn't see the CSD as an exclusive body at all once it's formed. We're going to need everyone's help to get everything done throughout the next decade. So we need you to stay involved if you don't get elected. Cool. So last thing, summer reading. You don't have to look it up yourself. This is just a general overview of what we would send you. But leave your email text me your email if you're on the call. If you don't have my phone number, I'll put my number right here on the add notes.
The phone isn't on vibrate, by the way. It's because it comes through on the computer as well.
Yeah.
There's no way to avoid this.
I put it on Do Not Disturb.
Okay. Well, then
I forgot. So that's my email. Email me if you would like the summer reading list that we'll compose, and we'll send you a link to the Dropbox. It'll have a variety of things that you would want to read to be better informed and to decide if you even want to run or why you would want to run or what you would want to run on. For example, what is so special about special districts? That is a document produced by the state Senate that describes.
It's a primer.
Yeah, it's a primer on like what are special districts. That's like what everyone reads at the beginning usually. Service plan, Cameron, is like a document.
The service plan is basically like if you followed this cookie cutter, you would have a CSD that would do services. It doesn't have to be followed exactly, but it's basically what was presented throughout this as kind of the example of what it could do and how the money works out to do it.
The financial feasibility report, this was something that Isla Vista had wanted for a long time as well to confirm what our options were. It really goes in deep on the finances in IV. The Tuesday meeting minutes, we had those from December 2014 until April 2016 every Tuesday, and notes are by Cameron for the most of them. You can read them, what the discussions were in the creation of the CSD. So this is especially good for people who haven't been involved for a long time or from the beginning, because it gives you a good sense of how things change and where they progress.
And the service plan that I will send you, if you ask for this summer reading, I will be sending you the service plan that has all of the appendices attached. A lot of these other documents are in those appendices. It's very, very long and extensive. The Tuesday meeting minutes are like 60 pages themselves. You don't have to go through every single thing, but it's really good to get a picture of how this progressed.
Yeah, actually, the service plan with appendixes is like 320 pages. If you read those 320 pages,
you'll be very well informed.
You'll be good to go for the most part. I mean, there's more you could do, but I would say that's 60% to 70% of the work is to read that 320 pages. So it's important. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If not, we thank you for coming today. This was the first of a couple info sessions, and we'll start promoting more soon. But even if you're interested in running, your help is appreciated in getting the word out, because everyone should have a chance to know if they want to run or not.
Yep. And I hope this was pretty easy and painless. So please seriously tell your friends. Tell them it only took half an hour. Tell them it's just as easy as going to a link on the computer. We know it's summer, so we want to make sure that we get a lot of students who otherwise wouldn't have a chance to make it.
Yeah. Cool. Have a good day.